Hello and welcome. You're watching Grace to Power. My name is Mohammed Saleh. And on the show today, Donald Trump's tariffs on Canada threaten to turn the relations between the two neighbors on their head. So what has been Canada's response, and how will this tariff war change the North American continent? And the leaders of the European nations are in a huddle in Brussels as the French President Emmanuel Macron has warned that the continent was what he calls at a turning point in history. But let's of course start with this big story. Donald Trump's tariff war has triggered a fresh flurry of negotiations and calculated decisions after Washington's month-long delay in their implementation expired. On Wednesday, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke to the US President. Now, both leaders discussed trade and Washington's concerns of fentanyl smuggling in a 50-minute-long call. Now, according to reports, the US Vice President J.D. Vance and the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick were also part of this phone call. Now, following the conversation, Donald Trump posted on his social media platform Truth Social, once again referring to Trudeau as Canada's governor, putting the spotlight back on his statements of Canada becoming America's 51st state. Later in the day, the White House press secretary has confirmed Trump's territorial ambitions with respect to Canada.
Well, the president put that in his True Social account, or his True Social post earlier today. He feels strongly that it would be very beneficial for the Canadian people to be the 51st state of the United States. They wouldn't be paying for these tariffs. They'd have much lower taxes if they were part of our great country.
The talks between Washington and Ottawa resumed after Canada slapped retaliatory tariffs on the United States at a time when elections are due in Canada, and the Liberal Party is expected to announce a new Prime Minister next week. There is growing concern over the scale of the impact that the Canadians will have to bear.
But definitely in the way of everyday life and stuff, I am a little concerned about tariffs when it comes to things like groceries and stuff like that. And well, in terms of our retaliatory ones, I definitely think they are necessary. I really think that what Trump and the U.S. government is doing is not the correct way to go about things.
Now, the tariffs are expected to hit Canadian jobs, prices and overall growth. More than 2.4 million jobs are linked to U.S. trade, and economists predict that unemployment could climb to as much as 6.6% to perhaps even 8%. Inflation is also expected to rise as the tariffs increase the cost for businesses and consumers. The Bank of Canada will announce its monetary policy decision on the 12th of March, and the markets now see a 90% chance of a rate cut to cushion the impact. In Windsor, Ontario, a key auto manufacturing hub, layoffs could in fact begin within a matter of days. And Mayor Drew Dilkins has warned that 25% tariffs could be catastrophic for the industry. Experts have warned that Canada could slip into a recession as the tariffs ripple through the economy. Household debt is expected to rise, corporate profits will take a bit of a beating, and the provincial credit ratings could suffer, with exemptions on auto tariffs offering just a little bit of relief to Canada. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we are joined on this broadcast by Mr. Terry Milewski, who is a journalist and also author of Blood for Blood, 50 Years of Global Khalistan Project. Mr. Milewski, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast. Now, what is happening between the United States and Canada is baffling to say the least. The American president has repeatedly called Canada the 51st state of the United States of America. He's referred to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau over and over again. How is this resonating within the people of Canada?
Well, it's surprising and it's interesting that Canadians who have a reputation, as you well know, of being very polite and deferential and eager to get along with everybody, is showing some spine. There's a sort of national rally round the flag spirit, and people are happily deciding that they will no longer buy American booze or any other American product. The Premier of Ontario, Canada's largest province, as you know, has just announced that he's cancelling. He's just cancelling, wiping out a $100 million contract with Elon Musk's company for internet services, Starlink. Canada is showing some fight here. Whether they can win such a fight against such a powerful enemy is an interesting debate, and perhaps we will debate that. But at the moment, it's pretty clear that Justin Trudeau, despite the fact that he has already announced that he is moving on, that he is resigning as Prime Minister, and that will be soon replaced by another Liberal who will have to call an election. Despite all of that political uncertainty, there does seem to be a great deal of certainty on the Canadian side that we will fight come what may, and that provinces that were previously in disagreement with each other are fighting together on Team Canada, as they call it, that they are going to condemn and oppose and resist every step of the way, no matter what Trump does. And they're gambling. It's a big gamble, I grant you. They're gambling that the Americans will feel the pain and back down.
But the Americans are already feeling the pain because the trade deficit for the Americans has again gone up for the month of January. This is the latest that has come in. Now, Donald Trump says that his reasoning as to why he wants to slap these tariffs on Canada is because of the smuggling of fentanyl. But people who are in the know say that the amount of fentanyl that is being smuggled in from Canada into the United States is very, very little compared to Mexico. With that being the case, what do you think is prompting Donald Trump to slap these tariffs and starting this tariff war with Canada?
Well, you're right to point out that it's certainly not the reason that he gives. The reason they give is because, and I'm quoting now from one of the reports of the angry phone call yesterday between the president and the prime minister, where the Americans are alleged to have said, or J.D. Vance, the vice president, is alleged to have said, Canada is killing Americans because of not doing anything about the fentanyl trade crossing the border. Well, the American administration, Mr. Trump and Mr. Vance, are gambling that Americans don't follow the news, don't care about Canada, don't understand this whole dispute. And, well, the president and the administration all say that Canada is allowing a flood of fentanyl across the border. This is absolute baloney. What's happening is that about 1% of the international trade in fentanyl is across the Canada-US border. The current figures are not available. They're usually, it takes about a year to gather actual data. And at the moment, the absurdity of the American position is made palpable and absolutely clear by the fact that the Americans are asking for up-to-date data to show that Canada has cracked down on the fentanyl trade.
Right.
That data is not currently available. It won't be available for many months to come. So they're asking for imaginary data in order to shore up Canada's claim. This is absolute nonsense, this whole fentanyl business. Canada's not a player in the international fentanyl trade.
Indeed. Now, the United States, Canada traditionally have had very close relationship. It needs to be seen as to how this trade, this relationship progresses in the Trump administration in the United States. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Terry Milewski, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you.
Now, the Trump administration has faced a bit of a setback legally in court as it is fighting a barrage of lawsuits that target administrative overhaul and unchecked powers of billionaire Elon Musk. This story is about the ongoing case about the freezing of foreign aid. Now, the American Supreme Court upheld a lower court ruling that had earlier ordered the government to release funds to the U.S. Agency for International Development. The judges were divided over the verdict, but they upheld the previous decision by a narrow vote of 5-4. Now, the order rejects a plea by Donald Trump's administration that was seeking to withhold aid payments worth about $2 billion. Now, to clarify to our viewers, a lower court had already ordered the administration to release the money to the agencies for the work that they had already done. The lower court judge had granted a deadline of the 26th of February for the funds to be released. However, just short of the deadline, the Trump administration sought the Supreme Court's intervention. Two aid organizations filed the lawsuit shortly after Donald Trump ordered that all foreign aid should be halted for a period of 90 days. The decision has triggered public outcry, with many organizations lamenting that freezing funds hurts critical humanitarian work. Now, the freeze is part of a larger project of the administration to slash public spending. Now, Trump handed over the task to the loyalist and billionaire Elon Musk, who is fronting the Department of Government Efficiency, what is also known as DOGE, for implementing the spending cuts. So this, of course, is a big developing story within the United States of America, where Donald Trump seems to have got a bit of a legal setback in terms of the U.S. aid funds freeze-off, where the court has ruled 5-4 against him. But it remains to be seen as to how this story, of course, progresses from here. Because remember, Donald Trump has been repeatedly talking about cutting down the unnecessary expenditure, as he puts it, for which he's entrusted Elon Musk to go about cutting down on the excess amount of expenditure that he said simply does not serve the interests of the U.S. taxpayer. He wants that the government should function in the manner that it should, and therefore DOGE, which stands for Department of Government Efficiency, has been stopping aid, and it remains to be seen as to how this case, of course, progresses from here. And WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani, of course, is joining us with the latest on the story. Susan, this is Donald Trump's, in many ways, it's one of his pet projects where he wants to bring about more efficiency in terms of how the American taxpayers' money is spent. Tell us more about this legal setback that Donald Trump has suffered legally within the United States with respect to DOGE.
Yeah, it was very unlikely that any court would have accepted this call by the president, considering the fact that this $2 billion is for work that has already been done by these foreign aid organizations. So, there's a temporary halt to President Trump's directive, 5-4, even Amy Coney Barrett, who Trump appointed himself during his first term as president for Supreme Court Justice, also cited saying that this was illegal. Now, how much further the Trump administration can move forth in sort of stopping this aid, at least for a 90-day period, is what they wanted to do. That's yet to be seen. But right now, we know that the work that has already been done, the money needs to get paid to those people.
Indeed. That, of course, is the crux of this entire controversy. Thank you very much, indeed, Susan Tehrani, for joining us with those details there. Let's now shift our attention to across the Atlantic, where leaders of the European Union nations are in a bit of a huddle in Brussels on a huge security question that confronts Europe. An emergency EU meeting and also a special council on defence is currently underway, and it comes as the French President Emmanuel Macron has warned that the continent is, what he describes in his words, at a turning point in history. The leaders of the 27 EU nations are meeting in Brussels for the very first time since the explosive Zelensky-Trump showdown happened at the Oval Office in White House last week. The meeting comes amidst a sense of anxiety after the Trump administration stopped military aid to Ukraine and pushed Europe to take responsibility for its own. The top of the agenda, of course, is to increase military spending. The biggest immediate theme will be the outright support to Ukraine in its war against Russia.
Big appreciation. We are very thankful that we are not alone, and these are not just words, we feel it. It's very important. You made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families, and it's great that we are not alone. We feel it and we know it. Thank you so much for everything.
Now, Germany is to nearly double its defense budget to 100 billion euros to take on the new challenges. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has stressed on the need for Europe to stand together, whether on the question of defense or trade pressures.
Europa ist der stärkste Wirtschaftsraum der Welt.
Europe is the strongest economic area in the world with its own opportunities, and that is why it is very important that, especially when it comes to tariffs, we are also clear about how we act in this matter, namely united and determined. This is a must when it comes to discussions with the United States of America.
The French President Emmanuel Macron has called for an incredible awakening. In a televised address on the eve of the meeting, he said that he's open to extending France's nuclear deterrence to European partners in the face of the Russian threat. Macron has also reiterated the possibility of sending European troops to Ukraine to enforce a peace deal. Paris has said that it would share its intelligence capabilities with Ukraine after the US cut them off. Now, there is a stress on the idea that a peace deal that Trump advocates cannot mean surrender to Russia. On Monday, the European Council chief Ursula von der Leyen announced an unprecedented defense package called Rearm Europe. She had spoken of a massive boost to defense spending with the speed and the ambition that is needed. The Kremlin, of course, is hit back at the meeting. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned that European peacekeepers in Ukraine would be viewed as official NATO involvement in the war. He has termed Macron's speech to be extremely confrontational, saying that it indicates that France is keen on continuing with the war. And our correspondent William Denslow has sent us this report from Brussels. Listen in.
Heading into this summit, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described it as a watershed moment as Europe faces a clear and present danger from Russia. On the docket at this summit were several key issues: support for Ukraine, both in the short term and the long term, primary among it. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is at this summit. He has thanked European leaders for their continued support for Ukraine. When it comes to short-term military aid, well, the European Union has floated the idea of sending to the tune of 1.5 million rounds of ammunition to Ukraine. All eyes will be on whether Hungary signs off on that kind of proposal. Viktor Orban, the country's prime minister, has been reluctant to pass further military aid packages for Ukraine, citing that it could conceivably hurt attempts from the United States to broker a peace arrangement with Russia. Also being discussed long-term security guarantees, things like the so-called coalition of the willing potential peacekeepers to be sent to Ukraine in the future. Also discussing Emmanuel Macron, France's president's comments he made this week on potentially European allies being able to use France's nuclear umbrella. Also a key topic, Europe's security and Europe's collective defence. This week, the European Commission has unveiled a plan called Rearm Europe, which essentially could free up roughly $840 billion worth of funds to boost Europe's defence capabilities going forward. The message we've heard from the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, she says that it's about damn time, as she puts it, that Europe stands on its own 2 feet when it comes to its defence and collective security. William Denslow for WION, Brussels.
The Portuguese Prime Minister Luís Montenegro has now proposed a motion of confidence in his year-old minority government. Despite showing some strong opposition from the main political parties, Montenegro has been in office for just about a year, has proposed the vote on the 5th of March. The decision to proceed with the confidence vote follows cabinet approval, with a parliamentary vote expected next week. If lawmakers reject the confidence motion, then the government will fall and will assume a caretaker role. In this scenario, President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa will then decide whether to dissolve the parliament or to call for fresh elections. Now, many analysts believe that early elections are likely, marking the third such election since 2022.
Early elections are not desirable, but they will be a necessary evil to prevent the degradation of institutions and the loss of political stability at the whim of a few agitators.
Now, this political crisis is fueled by a conflict of interest allegation involving Spinum Viva, a consultancy firm that is owned by Prime Minister's family. The opposition parties claim that contracts between Spinum Viva and private companies, including the Solverde Casino Group, have improperly benefited Montenegro. However, the main opposition parties, including the Socialist Party and the far-right Chiga Party, have vowed to defeat the confidence motion, further expressing strong objections to the government's handling of the situation. Let's also now take a quick look as to what is making headlines in the world of politics. Now, Europe's top rights court has rejected the Romanian far-right candidate Calin Georgescu's bid to overturn the annulment of last year's presidential elections. Now, the ECHR ruled his appeal to be inadmissible, stating that Romania had no case to answer on claims of rights violations, including fair trial and freedom of expression. A new presidential vote is all set to happen on the 4th of May, with a possible runoff on the 18th of May. The Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Abkhazia's new leader, Badra Gunba, on his electoral win at a meeting between the two leaders. Now, Abkhazia is a breakaway region of the country of Georgia and is overseen by the Russian military. The vote came after Gunba's predecessor was ousted in protest over a controversial investment deal with Russia. Now, Gunba also noted the historical, fraternal and economic ties between Russia and Abkhazia and said that our guys today continue to fight together for our truth on the fields. The former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet ruled out a third term in November's election, saying that it's time for a new leadership. At 73, Bachelet remains the left's strongest polling candidate, but the right is favored to win. Now, Chile's only female president, she served 2 terms and has pushed forth social reforms and later held a top United Nations human rights role as well. Now, South Sudan's fragile peace deal is under threat after the forces that arrested 2 allies of Vice President Riek Machar. His home was also briefly surrounded by troops. This comes amidst some fierce clashes between the government troops and rebels in Upper Nile State. The United Nations has warned of heavy weapons use amidst the rising deaths, even as regional and Western powers are calling for restraint amidst fears that the country could actually slide back into a war. And with that's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yowon.com.
As Ibrahim Ali Khan makes his grand debut, we look at the other upcoming star kids of Bollywood.
Hi, I'm Neena Gupta and you are watching me on WION.
Meet Indian actor Neena Gupta as she talks about her latest release. And find out the actors running in the race for James Bond. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION E-Club at these times.
Amid the mayhem and chaos of M23's takeover of the DRC, more than 50,000 people flee to Burundi, risking their lives by swimming across the Rusizi River. Over 20 dead in the last 2 weeks. The US government's sudden decision to axe funding for HIV programs is a wake-up call for South Africa. The country's health minister says the cuts could lead to deaths. And the love life of South Africa's Zulu king has the country excited and in suspense, and has scandalized his socially conservative subjects as he messes with tradition by seeking a divorce. Wild of Africa at these times on WION. Wild is one.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
and welcome. You're watching Fine Print. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. The EU leaders meet in Brussels for emergency talks after Donald Trump has withdrawn military support to Ukraine. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed gratitude and has said that he's thankful that Ukraine is not alone in this war. The Kremlin has specified that it does not consider the United States as a friendly nation with shared values, saying that it is working to revive and to restore bilateral relations. It has termed Marco Rubio's religious views on Lent to be his personal right. China has accused Washington of unilateralism and bullying and has warned that Washington's tariff threats are disrupting the global economy. It's also vowed to fight the United States trade war till the very end. And South Africa has said that the United States has pulled out of a climate funding deal struck by rich nations to help their developing counterparts transition towards clean energy. The United States had pledged about $56 million in terms of grants for the initiative and an additional $1 billion in terms of commercial investments. The Zimbabwean foreign minister applies to join the BRICS group of nations during a visit to Moscow, calls BRICS one of the most important platforms for economic cooperation. The US trade deficit for January is at a 33-year-old record dating back to the year 1992. The trade gap had ballooned to about 34% to $131.4 billion as imports have spiked and tariff worries have flared in the month of President Donald Trump's inauguration. The Spanish prosecutors will appeal the sentence handed to Luis Rubiales for forcibly kissing Jennifer Hermoso. They want the trial declared null and void and are calling for a fresh hearing, questioning the judge's impartiality. So let's start with some breaking news where Russia